Kwasan, everyone. Hello. I've met many of you, so I'm really happy that you're here. And those that are new to me, welcome. I'm very excited to share a little bit about the history of Tomaquag Museum. People get confused sometimes and they think Tomaquag is the name of a tribe or a tribal nation, but it actually means beavers in the Narragansett language. And we were really founded in the town of Hopkinton by Eva Butler, who's depicted to your left, and Princess Redwing, who was a Narragansett Wampanoag woman. Eva was a scholar and an anthropologist. And they were very unique. In 1958, to have two women found a museum was really unique. And then to have an Indigenous woman who was presenting from a first person voice, even more so. And so we're really excited to, share a little bit of the history. Of course, we're in what is now known as Rhode Island, which is the homelands of the Narragansett people. So we do highlight and spotlight the Narragansett Indian Tribal Nation. However, we also uplift Indigenous voices and how they intersect throughout Southern New England and sometimes even nationwide, depending on the topic area of the content. And so Tomaquag Museum, although it began in 1958, has had a long road to get to the space and place that we are today. It started really as a volunteer-run organization. Eva Butler used to give pin money to some of the people that acted as educators during the summer months in the very early days. And from 1958 to 1969, it was in Hopkinton in Tomaquag Valley. But then it moved after Eva Butler passed away to Arcadia, where we're currently located, but we actually have been in 3 different buildings in this location. Princess Redwing actually went to my grandparents, Eleanor and Ferris Dove, who owned and operated Dovecrest Restaurant, or sometimes known as Dovecrest Indian Restaurant, and asked if there was a place for this museum when the Butler family had to do some things after her passing. And so we needed to find a new home for the museum. And so it resided on the Dovecrest property from 1970 to 1977. In 1977, something unique happened. We became a 501c3 and became a nonprofit organization. And because of that, we could not be on the for-profit business property. And so we moved next door to an old farmhouse. And we were there from 1977 to about 96. In about 1996, my mother, Dawn Dove, actually bought the Dovecrest property back. It had been sold in 1984. And all this time, from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, into the 2000s, when I founded Nuituan School here at Tomaquag Museum and ran it through 2010, the museum was a volunteer-run organization. We had board members who were helping. We had volunteers of other sorts that were helping, but there was no paid staff until 2010, when I, as the executive director, even though I started in 2003, I was spending the majority of my time in Nuituan School and just using some of my time to help with the administrative components of the museum. After 2010 and the devastating floods, the board and I really did some work on reorganizing and restructuring our organization and decided that we needed to build a really strong foundation for this organization so that even though it was getting very old and we're over 60 years old, we hadn't had the longevity that we would like to have or sustainability. So in 2015, we only had 3 employees. I was the first in 2010, full-time as the executive director, and a couple of part-time employees. And despite only having 3 employees at the time, we actually got nominated for the National Medal, which is the highest honor for museums and libraries in the whole United States. And in 2016, we won that medal, which is the top picture where you see the former First Lady Michelle Obama. And that year we flipped from 3 staff to 6 staff. And it was so amazing. All these things were happening at once. And over these last several years, now in 2023, we have 14 employees, 8 of them part-time, full-time, and 6 of them part-time. And then we even have 3 paid fellows. And we've been averaging over 15,000 people per year over the last like 5 or 6 years, even despite the pandemic. There was a little dip in that really bad year, but even then we were well over 10,000. So it's been very exciting to watch us grow. And in that bottom picture, you can see all our staff from our annual event last year. And so we've been growing in such a rapid rate, and our growth of employees is important, but not just because we have more employees, but we're really empowering Indigenous people, and we're creating wage equity for our Native and non-Native staff, because until about 20, I lost track of the year, about 2 years ago, we only had 2021, we only had me as a full-time staff person. So those 7 others, it's only been in the last 2 years that we flipped that. And so that shows you how our staff was underemployed and also didn't have benefits. And we've been really working on wage equity and using the New England Museum Association and the American Association of Museums salary surveys to help empower our staff in our community. And it's been really important to do that, to create those important things. So our organizational priorities really can stem or sift down to 2: to educate the public, including the Indigenous public, on our history, our culture, the arts, traditional ecological knowledge, and social justice, and to empower the Native community by creating equity for the most underserved and underrepresented community in the state. Most people don't know this, but we're 3 times below the white majority and still economically under every single other ethnicity in this state, according to our most recent census. And so our Indigenous Empowerment Center, which we have now, which is 1 room, but soon will be a whole building of its own, it will really act as a model for eradicating poverty in Native communities. It's a way to create opportunities and systems and structures to create pathways to educational opportunities through job training, entrepreneurship, internships, fellowships. The list goes on. There's so many things that we do to empower the Native community. And so it's really exciting to see how we're growing and how we're changing. So this is our museum currently, and it shows our limited capacity. It shows how small our constraints are. Our museum, when we put everyone in rows, we're lucky if we can fit 30 or 35 adults in that space. Although we use our landscape and our outbuilding now to do what we need to do, it is a challenge. Just last week, we had 100 students on Monday and 100 7th graders on Tuesday. And we have to have 4 different locations. We have to pray that it doesn't rain so that we can do traditional ecological knowledge walks, do games outside. So we're looking forward to the day when we can have our education space. The new education building will have 2 classrooms, which when all opened up, because it can be 1 big room, can fit over 300 people. So we'll be able to do films and presentations and storytelling in ways that we can't possibly do in our current location. And we also really want to work on accessibility for things that seem so mundane, but make such a difficulty in our lives, like bathrooms. If you've been here, you know we have 1, and it's in another building. So when it's raining or snowing, it's really difficult. In this time of year when we get a lot of students and we can hope that the weather will stay nice, we also have porta potties outside. Not pleasant, but at least you get to go. We have terrible parking. Last year at our Strawberry Thanksgiving, we had over 350 people show up here, which was fantastic, and they had a great time, but the parking was a nightmare, which is why this year on June 10th, we're doing Strawberry Thanksgiving on the URI quad. The disadvantage is they don't get to visit the museum itself, but they'll get all the rest of the activities that we would do. So you might want to join us there. So it's really important for us to find the space that we need, and this new museum is going to give us the parking, it's going to give us the bathrooms, it's going to make our collection storage and archival areas and libraries accessible, or much more accessible to folks. Right now they're upstairs, up very steep old-fashioned stairs. So those are the kinds of things that will create opportunity. And so this limited capacity, even though we've been very successful despite it, we're really looking forward to the opportunities that the new museum will bring. And Michelle is going to lead us into some of that.
Thanks, Loren. The other thing, that I've noticed working with the organization for a couple of years, Tomaquag has all these great new staff members and whatnot, but they have staggered schedules because there isn't enough room in the building for everybody to work all at the same time. So that will be a wonderful luxury. But this slide, you have an architectural rendering, an overview of the campus. There's the explanation of the 4 buildings on the campus to the right. But just some points I want to point out. So on the left-hand side behind that tree, you see a bus. There's going to be dedicated bus parking. And then the lower right-hand side, a big parking lot for general parking. The buildings are all single level to accommodate anybody with mobility issues. And all of the buildings will have public restrooms. So this is all a very, very good thing. Tomaquag Museum, the organization, is so much bigger than a building. You've heard the keywords and the mission of Tomaquag Museum, and the 3 components of educate, engage, and empower. So, in short, to paraphrase, Tomaquag Museum strives to educate all on Southern New England Indigenous cultures through engagement, shared dialogue, to reconcile the past and empower the future. So what these 4 buildings represent are the different program identities that all come together to make Tomaquag Museum the nonprofit organization. The museum is the front center, the front building, which will have a state-of-the-art exhibit space along with a contemporary art gallery. East and west sides are your Indigenous Empowerment Center with its own building and artist in residence studios, as well as a cafe serving Indigenous fare. The Education Center to the right, to which Loren spoke about, the overhangs of the rendering will serve as outdoor classroom space. And then finally, the Research Center, where all the cultural belongings will be stored. This will be a state-of-the-art facility where not only folks can come in person to do their research, to learn, but there will be connectivity allowing people from across the globe to participate and connect with Tomaquag Museum's cultural belongings. So Loren, I know you talked about the Indigenous Empowerment Center as its own building, and then the cafe that is going to be in there. I don't know if you wanted to say anything special about that.
What's so nice about the cafe, which of course will have its own name, we're just using that as a holder. It's a quick bite eatery where people can sample some Indigenous foods. We'll be eating with the seasons, kind of thinking farm to table, land to table, water to table kinds of thinking. But it's really also a workforce development project. It's so that our interns and fellows that are coming in not only can learn about museum careers, but can learn about entrepreneurship and restaurant careers and get certification in food service, business planning, and all kinds of things related to that. So we're in the Indigenous Empowerment Center. A lot of the work we do is around creating educational and job training opportunities for the Native community, which started with arts community first with the Native artists, and then expanded to other areas of business, including even supporting masonry businesses and other kinds of businesses that are in our community. but we are underserved in that way. So this is an opportunity to really uplift and broaden and market and expose those Native businesses to many other people. And so we're really
Nice.
excited about that. And more than anything, it's going to be lovely to sit out on the patio that is depicted in our landscape rendering, and sip tea and have meetings out on the on the patio with you all. And I just can't wait to sit there and have lunch. It'll be so great. Now everybody, if they don't bring their own lunch, has to run to town, which takes, you know, a good 15 minutes to do. 10 to 15 minutes. So it'll be so great to have something right there. And for researchers that are coming, you know, no one wants to stop the work they're doing to have to go find something to eat. And this will give them that opportunity to have soups and salads and sandwiches and other kinds of foods, quick bites to sustain them until they're done with their visit at the museum or their research that they're doing. And we're very excited about it.
Thanks. So before I advance to the next slide and talk about the process of planning for this initiative, now that you've seen a little bit of an overview and just a little teaser of what the new campus has to offer, wondering if you, for some interactive, if you could put in the chat, you know, what kinds of, who would come and visit this campus? Who would use what it has to offer? What constituency groups outside of yourselves? I know you will all be first in line. If you could just pop that in the chat, and Evan can collect that for us. I'll give you 30 seconds or so, and I'll then advance the slide. All righty. Evan, do we have some answers?
There's some awesome answers here. So university high school students. Oh, should I wait?
Yeah. No, definitely.
University and high school students, families with children, local people from all over New England, people researching Eastern Woodlands baskets, church groups, art groups, public schools, tourists, international tourists interested in Indigenous cultures of the Americas, Brown University students studying Indigenous ways of caring for the environment, school groups, historians doing research, individuals who want to determine which Indigenous tribes are living, in the area, artists, educators. So a lot of awesome answers here.
Wow. Well, this is great. I can't wait to see all of those answers. And, you know, we should have just went straight to y'all for this, but back in pre-pandemic, during the planning, we engaged 150 stakeholders, held focus groups, and asked these questions for some deep dives as to, you know, who is our future audience and who will we be connecting to? And it was a very much an eye-opening experience. And again, learning exactly what Tomaquag has to offer really helped to portray the absolute relevance of this project. The rendering below is the lobby, the entrance to the new museum. The back wall will be the kind of contemporary art gallery, which will change. A nice welcome center. And then to the right will be this very large state-of-the-art exhibit gallery, along with restrooms and some back office space. The 10x is how many more people Tomaquag Museum can serve. So 15,000 now. And as Loren mentioned, we're meeting our capacity and not able to serve more people. For those of you who've been to Tomaquag Museum, the location in Exeter, no, it's intimate. So most of that is done in the community, serving those people. That will still continue, and it will still increase. But the people that Tomaquag Museum at the new location can host, it will be at least 10 times more. So we're looking at 150,000 people a year. The second number, $6.2 million, reflects the annual economic impact as a result of the new Tomaquag Museum campus. And that is a very conservative number. It's based on the arts economy. Economic statistics show that for every one job in the arts and culture economy, it produces 3.785 jobs, either in supporting or creation. And when all is said and done, the new Tomaquag Museum campus will employ 28 full-time equivalent employees, FTEs. So it will actually be about 40-something employees, because many of them will be part-time. Taking the average, those 28 FTEs, with that math, you get a little over 140 times the median salary in Rhode Island. You get $6.2 million. So it's really quite impressive. And I'll tell you, I'll give you some more stats, but Loren already spoke to the Indigenous Empowerment Center in the cafe and the economic benefit that that is going to provide as well. The nice thing is it's very scalable. I'm going to save this slide for Loren because she's only been working on this part for about 10 years. So for those that don't know, Loren, where are we going?
We are going to Kingston. It's very exciting. It has been a long journey because we have worked on this for quite some time. We actually went a deep dive in Westerly at one point in time, and had gotten quite far along on the process. And then towards the end, it didn't quite work for the partner location because we wanted someone to have the land and for us to build the buildings. And at the time, both organizations were pretty small, so it was a big endeavor, but we learned a lot as we went through that process. So after that, we visited over the next couple of years, 10 more sites, 4 in the town of Charlestown, 3 at the University of Rhode Island, 4 at the Department of Environmental Management, which were in several towns, and 1 at the Rhode Island Historical Society. And what we looked for is it visible? Where we're located now, you don't just happen by, right? It's really far off the beaten path. So we wanted, people to be driving by and be able to see it fairly quickly. Was it accessible? And our definition for that was, is there public transportation? In Kingston, there are buses, there are trains, and there are bike paths. So there's lots of intersectionality there. And we started talking with URI very seriously, and it took us about 5 years to go through the process. President Dooley, who was the former URI president, really liked the idea, and it was a very rigorous process to get to a license agreement, which we received in 2020 for 18 acres of land on the Kingston campus that would become the new Tomaquag Museum. It's very, very exciting to think about how long it has taken us, but it's been such a learning experience, and we are getting so close. Every day we're closer and closer to a shovel to the ground. And we'll talk more about that later.
And again, the benefits are amazing, but at the same time, it's still a rural location. And so it's kind of the best of both worlds. Another component about the economic impact is the museum store. So the museum store is something that the current location has now, sells merchandise at the museum as well as on the online store. But in the new location, again, it can be another scalable business line where Indigenous Empowerment Center participants can learn how to do contracts for consignment, how to market through online means. And again, that with the cafe just provides so many opportunities for the population, for the organization, and for the state of Rhode Island. So we talked about where, when is this gonna happen? Ooh, and I'm stuck. Oh, forgive me. Whoops. There we go. I don't know why it wasn't advancing, sorry. But anyway, so when, project timeline. So 4 buildings, we're going to break this down into 2 different phases. The first phase is actually going to be the biggest, the biggest hall, and the museum building will be the very first building that is constructed, followed immediately by the Indigenous Empowerment Center and then the Education Center. We plan on breaking ground this time next year. It's very exciting. So the museum building, that will involve all the site clearing and the parking lot and all that kind of stuff, in addition to that museum. So basically, when they're just about with the finish work, and then the carpentry, the framing team can move over, so on and so forth. During this presentation, Lorraine, I was thinking, you know, maybe 2026, we open the Indigenous Empowerment Center. That'll be the 10-year anniversary. Right?
It's true. That is true. It'll be 10 years. And it is very exciting to see this unfold, and how the 3 buildings work together to provide the education and experience for the public. Although the research center will also have a component in that, and we do intend to have an entry gallery in that building as well, so that people that are visitors can go to each building for different reasons. And but it works really well, because the timeline, it takes time. You build the museum building, but the exhibits have to be fabricated and installed, and the staff has to be put in the offices, that the education team, and learn all those new exhibits. And while that's happening, these other 2 buildings will be finishing, because they go together. You know, you as the visitor, you want to come to the museum and you want to do an educational workshop in the education center, and you want to go over and have a bite to eat in the Indigenous Empowerment Center, and then maybe circle back to the main museum and go to the gift shop one more time before you leave and support Indigenous artists, or buy great Tomaquag swag.
There you go. The rendering that you see here is more to highlight the plantings. There will be a big focus on technological ecological. Wait a minute, why am I getting wrong?
Traditional
ecological knowledge, TEK, and which is, it's so important to not only this project, but it's the basis of the culture. The indigenous plants, medicinal plants, will have the Three Sisters Garden, other outdoor exhibits, walking paths, you name it. It's going to be very exciting. The phase 2 of Research Center, that will be started after the completion of phase 1, and when we reach budget neutrality as illustrated by the very detailed business plan that has been constructed, version 2. So that's the timeline. And then how much? This is a sparse slide, but one that is meaningful. I was going through some dates, and this time last year, I think we were talking to Champlin, right? Or a little bit before that. And so we were working with a very different budget of $11 million for the whole campus. And that included some other stuff to get us through. The impact from COVID labor shortages, economy, et cetera, has hit this project hard. But Loren being Loren, and perseverance should be her first name, not her middle name. We are moving forward, and the nice thing is folks are responding, funders are responding. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But so $15 million includes all 3 buildings and the site, and then also some buffer and transition costs and campaign costs. That's the whole kit and caboodle. So it is what it is, and we are going to persevere. The good news is, on the fundraising progress, we have raised $4.5 million, and we are still in the quiet phase. We have about $4.5 million in grant requests planned for 2023, and individual donors are pretty much limitless. I say limitless because, in general, according to Giving USA, they put out the major study every year of philanthropy. And of all of philanthropy in 2021, so based on last year's report, 67% of donors were individuals. 4% was corporations, 19% were foundations, and 9% were legacy gifts or bequests, which are also individuals. This is a campaign like no other, for an organization like no other, for a project like no other. In the beginning of this presentation, I talked about a little bit about my experience in different organizations that I've worked for. And a textbook capital campaign, you have your board of directors opening their Rolodex, which shows my age, opening doors, centers of influence, so forth and so forth. Loren spoke to the socioeconomic background of the local Indigenous community. Tomaquag Museum, and it's said a lot, and I don't know that people really appreciate or hear it, is an Indigenous-led organization, an Indigenous-led nonprofit organization. It's in their bylaws. More than 51% and more than 51% of their board, more than 51% of their staff are Indigenous. They are passionate, motivated, energetic individuals. They are not well-connected or rich. And that's okay, but we do have 100% participation, and everybody went above and beyond to make their pledges to this campaign. And that's a beautiful thing, that this organization, not having that criteria, I put in air quotes, is able to get to $4.5 million. And so why is this campaign like no other? We are leaning on our stakeholders, our friends. An example, I referenced Champlin Foundation. A year ago, we were sitting down with Champlin Foundations. I've had many, many, many interactions with Champlin in my career. This was by far very unique and special experience. If you've been in the Tomaquag Museum, that was the meeting of the site visit, where the executive director brought her entire team, which I think is 3 or 4 people, plus 5 members of the distribution committee, along with myself, Loren and Silvermood leading the meeting, and 1 or 2 board members. The executive director spoke very clearly that they do not give $1 million grants, and that Tomaquag Museum has never received like anything above, I forget, X number of dollars. And there was some education that needed to happen in that room, surprisingly. So it was a great opportunity to educate. It was a great opportunity to provide them the insights of why this project is so relevant. And long story short, they came back with a $1 million grant. Just recently, a friend of the organization introduced Loren to somebody of capacity based in New York, a couple. Loren hosted them at the museum in November, December. A couple months ago, they came back and asked for a proposal. 2 weeks ago, they came back and said, we will give you $500,000 paid over 2 years. We did not know these folks 6 months ago. So it can be done. It just takes a little door opening, faith, introductions, and patience. So we ask you to share this information with your friends and family, or introduce us to people who you think we should be engaged. Participate in smaller group learning sessions. This is why I am here. I'm happy to host any, either an individual or small groups. And of course, visit the museum if you haven't been there. I do want to share what I have experienced having worked in very different organizations, and some on the East Side in Providence. And when I tell them I'm working with Tomaquag Museum on their campaign, I often get a little blank stare. And, this is why we started the presentation off with, the picture of the beaver and what is Tomaquag and all that kind of stuff, because it's a common question. And it's also a question that sometimes people don't want to ask for fear they're going to be either politically incorrect or be clumsy or whatnot. As the token white girl, I get to say, hey, it's okay to ask these questions. It's okay not to know. Giving permission for people to want to understand our history. I was very early on, it was put into my head, there is no Rhode Island history without Narragansett history. And I am a Rhode Islander. I try to curb the accent once in a while, but I was born here and I plan on staying here for a long time. And it is important to know our history because, like we said, that founding sentiment on the front page, it helps drive our values. So that's my personal attribute. I know Loren has a lot more personal input that she would like to share, and then we can open it up for questions. So I'll let her close this presentation out.
Well, when I look at my great nephew in this picture here, I know that all of these things that I'm doing are for the next generations that come, my grandson, my great nieces and nephews, and all the children that have yet been born. But I also reminds me of that I was one of those little children at Tomaquag Museum. I was there when it was the 70s, and I was a little child, 5 and 6 years old, being one of those children to do a dance, say a poem, sing a song, to share culture with the community through the programming that took place at Tomaquag Museum. My mother was the volunteer director in the 70s that got us that 501c3. My grandmother, Eleanor Dove, was instrumental as the treasurer of the board when the museum was kind of struggling in the late 80s and 90s, kind of floundering around on that little tiny plot of land on that old farmhouse and not knowing quite what to do. She made sure we stayed a nonprofit, made sure we did all that paperwork. And I was never so proud to win the national medal for this organization. The organization won it, not me personally, because my grandmother got to see that Tomaquag Museum was, lauded on a national level. And we're the only museum in Rhode Island that has received it. There's one library and one museum, the Providence Public Library and Tomaquag Museum, that have received this, just very prestigious award. And when I think about all the layers of people that came before me and that led the way for me to be here as the executive director, I'm pretty sure when I was a child, even a teenager, even a young adult, and I was serving on this volunteer board, I never thought there'd be a day that we'd be here having these conversations. We sometimes joke at home. I'll tell you a secret. We joke. Like, there was a time when we thought a $50,000 budget was giant, right? And when we were first regrouping in 2003, and I can remember when we got our first $99,000 grant and we were just like over the moon. And not that you shouldn't be, but now we're talking in numbers that have millions in them. And it's, on one hand, very scary and overwhelming, but on the other hand, it's like, wow, we have come a long way as an organization from that volunteer run organization for more than 50 years of its existence to now this staffed and growing organization that can really empower the work that we're doing, so that this next generation, when this little child can see themselves in this museum and can be an intern in this museum, that can come to the cultural gatherings at this museum, that can see their parents and grandparents and great grandparents depicted in this museum. And so that's really, it's really amazing to think that I've been part of this legacy, and that the team here at Tomaquag Museum will continue to be part of this legacy and moving this museum forward. And all of our friends like you, are part of this legacy, this growth, because without you, we couldn't be successful. Without our friends, we truly, when Michelle was talking about we need our friends, she's not kidding. If we just relied on our inner group, we wouldn't be successful. But we are being successful because we're widening our circle and leveraging our relationships and having doors opened for us to new people. Sometimes those new people knew about us, but we didn't know they knew about us, and they certainly weren't in our database of someone to ask. So we just are so thankful that you tonight would be willing to hear our presentation, and thank you for letting us practice with you. And we just really are thankful for the friends groups and, you know, the Quakers, and just the work that you've been doing on our behalf, and just, you know, Evan and Em and all of you that are there that I can't see at the moment, and the willingness to be supportive of Tomaquag Museum. And many of you have already been very supportive of us in different kinds of ways, and I really appreciate the willingness to come out tonight and help us spread the word and find ways to meet new people, and help us to really build our team so that we can get to those big numbers. It sounds really scary, but the good part is we don't have to get all the way to the biggest number to make actions happen. Our next big number is to get to 6 million. And that will allow us to put the shovel in the ground next spring. So we're not so far away from that, which is really exciting. And so on that note, again, I want to thank everyone, all the folks on the thing. I see Betsy on here, and Edie and Elizabeth and Elsie and Em and Evan and Kurt and Martha and Rebecca and Victoria, and several of you, I think more than half I've at least met in person, maybe everyone at one time or another, but most I've met before. So I'm really excited to have you here. Katabatash, thank you so much. And I guess with that, if there's questions, if you put them in the chat, we can check that out. But if not, you can just shout it out and tell us what you'd like to hear, or ask us anything you'd like to know.
I'll go ahead, Lauren and Michelle, because I've been thinking very much about what would be useful for you in terms of feedback, and the ways to get that to you. I've been taking a lot of notes, and would like to maybe just send you a kind of summary of you know, things that really stood out, and things that, you know, you might want to think about. So can you guide us with the best way to, you know, send you feedback?
Sure. You're welcome to send it to myself or Michelle, whichever way you think is best.
Okay. Okay.
So, after we close this, I'll send you all an email, a follow-up email with just kind of an overview that has a little more meat in it. So I'll have obviously my contact information and Loren's contact information. So email, phone, anything works. Thank you, Rebecca.
And maybe some talking points that, you know, kind of really jump out that, you know, could be incorporated, or okay, good.
Yeah, and please consider me accessible. So call, text, email, I can go to you.
Great, great.
Thank you,
Yeah.
COVID. I don't get to drive around a lot now that I have a home office.
Just to say that one thing that I really missed was a description of the collections and how exciting it is to
Okay.
learn about culture and history and through the beautiful objects that are in your collection. So
Thank you. And that is definitely a good point that we didn't necessarily, I mean, we could on the page where we're talking about the research center could add some of that in. And the reality is we have a lot, and we could add in some things that we've done recently. So we did a full inventory of our collection just over it took us about 18 months with some support with some amazing PhD students and master's students. And we have about 10,000 belongings. I can get an exact number, although it's always ever shifting, but that's about approximately how many we have in our collection, which is really outstanding. And then could also give some people an idea a little bit about our archival collection as well, which is also very huge. It's over 100,000 pieces of, using photographs and documents and maps,
that's
all of those
phenomenal.
things. So, but that's a good point that we kind of left that out. Thank you. Victoria?
Yeah, hi. So a couple of questions. I'm thinking that some people would love to see this presentation at another time. That's not a week evening, maybe on a weekend. How do we do that? Do we have access to the presentation? How do we connect with you so that we can show this again?
So we are recording this, so for that purpose. So after it's done, I'll edit it a little bit on probably end and then the beginning. And I can give you the link to that. We could also, I or Lorraine or me, depending on Loren's schedule, can also facilitate questions and be there if we play it again. And then, the presentation's done, and if we can, if our schedules do align, and we'll try to make that happen if you wanted to have a bigger audience or whatnot.
Okay.
Sky's the limit, Victoria.
Okay, well, that's good. Question number 2. A lot of people would love to give a little per month if they can't afford to give a big amount for those of us who have more modest incomes. How does one connect with how to actually give that way?
So we do have pledge forms that people can do, so they can do them on a monthly, quarterly, annually, however they would like to do that. We are working on, which is just about done, a microsite that's specific to the campaign, which will allow the funding. Like right now, it's a little bit chunky because we're not in the big public campaign, which will get more of the, as you said, modest donations that are monthly and like that, but we have not set up the portal for that yet. That will open kind of at the same time as the kickoff to the shovel to the ground. So like next spring, that will kick off. But those people that we're talking to now, we can work that out because all that happens is if someone is doing it to our normal portal and we know it's a pledge and we have that documentation, we just transfer the funds from one account to the other till it gets to the correct account. Because we do have others that are doing that are, giving $100 a month and they're pledged to do it for 3 years or something like that. That's the kind of thing that's been happening. We've had, a few that are giving like $5,000 and it's divided up into a couple of years or what have you like that. So that is very possible. And Michelle is very good at those details, as is Denise, who is our development coordinator here at the museum. She has those documentation. So we can work that out as we go as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Lorraine and Michelle.
You're welcome. Thank you. Em?
Oh, this is fabulous. So exciting.
Thank you.
It's really, really neat. And it's neat to see the schematic of the site plan, you know, to see what it will actually look like. One question I had, and I just don't know, it was really for Michelle, this first part anyway. I don't know how you derive numbers like how many people will come to a museum. And so, and more generally, I'm wondering how you will be attracting people. It is actually still out in the country, right? URI is in the country. And so how will you get that New England wide or, you know,
So
group? How will it be marketed?
I might actually know the answer to this even more so than Michelle, because I kind of worked on a lot of that.
Yeah.
And so we are continually expanding how we're marketing. So one revenue source of marketing is like through Rhode Island Public's radio. So that's local, but it's targeted to certain audiences that go to museums and these kinds of things. The second part of that is we've been working with URI on some of the studies that they've already done on the number of tourists that go up 138 that are literally going by and heading to Newport. Three, we've also worked loosely with some tourist bus companies. The one that's in Rhode Island, the name is just eluding me at the moment. And so once we're set up and we're there, we'll be working with tourist bus companies that come through Rhode Island. Like if you've ever gone to, I don't know where, I guess it's getting close to nighttime, my brain isn't working. There's a restaurant in Charlestown that when we say is in the middle of nowhere, it's in the middle of nowhere, but they sell the buffet of seafood and such. And they have bus after bus after bus after bus that's coming through, but it's not like they're coming just for that, not just coming to the Nautic Lodge. They're taking a New England tour, and that's a stop. And so I serve on the South County Tourism Council. I was the chair for about 6 years. And there's a lot of tourism opportunity that we can't tap where we currently are, but in Kingston we can, because even though it's in South County, it's on the bus line, it's on a main thoroughfare, it's on your way to Newport and Narragansett and other tourist hubs. So there's a lot of opportunity there for us. And there's actually a lot of data floating around. We actually just put in a grant maybe a month ago to USDA, and part of that is going to be getting a consultant, if awarded, to analyze that tourism data so that we can really get a firm idea. We didn't pull those numbers completely out of our hat. However, we'd like to scaffold even deeper into it. And keep in mind that 10 times number isn't the day you open. It's like in 5 years, right? So it's not the very first day. And we have an our staffing pattern and our growth of numbers of people all grows each year over our 5-year business plan. You're welcome. Hi, Evan.
I just wanted to echo that a little bit to say how beautiful it's going to be at that new location. When I was first trying to volunteer with Tomaquag Museum in like 2018, and I was trying to get in touch. I was emailing Sam and saying, you know, I don't have access to a car. How do I get there? How do I get to Arcadia? And it's beautiful out there, but there was really no way. There was no way for me to get there. Whereas the new location, it's going to be on multiple bus routes. It's going to be on the bike path. It's going to be awesome. So the question I wanted to ask was about the museum itself, and kind of wondering how the exhibits are shifting with the new plan, how far along y'all are with the creation of what's going to be in the museum.
Yeah, that's a great question, Evan. So we are about halfway in our exhibit design planning. So we're working with Prown, which is an exhibit design firm. They're out of Massachusetts. Many people have to go nationwide to get those, but we chose to stay Southern New England in our selection, and they had vast experience working with other Native exhibits and Native communities to create those exhibits. So we're at about the halfway point. We've kind of just gotten through with the schematic design phase. And the next phase is the biggest dive. So the team is certain members of our board, a good portion of our staff, our advisory committee, which is a Native American advisory committee, which we have about 10 to 12 people on. And now we have a content committee. The content committee, the advisory committee, it's more like a once a month thing. The content committee for the next 8 weeks or so is going to be every week for 2 hours. And that goal, so where we kind of got to is like big ideas, like the very biggest idea, and then now like a bunch of big ideas. And now we have to scaffold down underneath them and start selecting, what are we going to talk about? You know, what are the exhibits going to be about? You know, is it going to speak to, you know, the whaling industry? Is it going to speak to the you know, conquest and colonization, which it will, but like how, like what stories? So it's kind of like, as we create the exhibit panels, it's like, what's the big story? You know, whaling, what are the individual stories that will be told in that? What's the image? What's the belonging, or AKA artifacts that will be shared? What is the audio or video that might go with that? And so that's kind of where we're at. But guess what? We're supposed to be done completely 100% by September. So by September, we're going to have what you would think of as the architectural plan for the exhibits. And then the next step for that would be fabrication. And you know, that's the actual creation of it. So we're about halfway through. We started last June and we're about halfway through the process, and the next process really speeds up. So we're really coming along with that. And then we will be having some focus groups and, you know, getting feedback as the storylines start to coalesce and we start to get some ideas. So it'll go beyond just the groups that are directly working on it, and we'll invite people, you know, send out an email and invite people to sign up to be part of that and give their feedback to what they're hearing about and seeing as far as the exhibits are concerned. Any other questions?
So we've been together for an hour now, so we're definitely cutting into your evening time. As promised, I'll send everybody an email with contact information, like that little overview, it's 10 pages, but it had some good information. Did you have another question?
Yeah, I just had, I mean, I know very little about this whole world. I'm seeing the Smithsonian Institution, of course, has its museum in DC and in New York. Is there any way that interested people can, you know, that they could be an information space for other more local museums?
Sure. So I already work with them in different kinds of ways. And I actually serve on a committee, or whatever you want to call it, for NMAI regarding Indigenous pottery. And so when I was talking with them, I was like, well, you know, about 10 or 12 years ago, actually it was more like 18, but nonetheless, we had gone to DC with Native youth. And I know there's a collection there that's local to here. And could they get us access to that information again? Because, you know, it was so long ago with Nuituan students, I didn't have the information anymore. And so they did. And so they're willing to loan things to us, you know, from this area. So it depends on what it is, of course, and whether it will fit. But in the exhibit design planning, now I have all this whole list. It was quite a lot of pages of belongings that the National Museum has in their Suitland, Maryland collection storage facility, that we could potentially use in our museum as well. And a lot of our partners, you know, whether that's Mystic, Seaport Museum, or Hafenraffer, they've offered, you know, a lot of support in different kinds of ways. And once we get really into what are the stories specifically going to be, it'll be much easier to leverage those relationships and have people give us feedback and technical knowledge and things. Right now, it's still a little gray still. And when it gets a little more specific, it'll get easier. But that is definitely something that we're doing. And I'm sure I will be able to leverage lots of support. I serve on many of those committees on the flip side when they're doing exhibits. So I should be able to get that reciprocity going when we need a hand on something pretty easily. Most of them have offered that anyhow. Yes, Rebecca? You had your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to offer, I have taught for years museum studies, and especially familiar with the collections of Indigenous material, not only in the United States, but in Canada and elsewhere. And the ethical issues and the political and identity questions that are involved. And so if anybody's interested in learning more about all of this material, please, get in touch with me. Lauren, I know you're super busy, but I just wanted to say that I think what is just so striking about this project is that it sprang from your people, and the story you have to tell is a story of people in a very intimate way. And it's a story of a history of those people. And it's a story of a collection that embodies, makes physical that history and people. But it's also, and this I think is the thing that is most powerful, it's a story about social realities. It's a story about social conditions. It's about moving through history and artifacts into an important movement of social justice and a better future. And that is so compelling. It's really wonderful. Thank you for the work you're doing. This is fantastic.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Rebecca.
you, Rebecca. Thank you all.
Thank you for having us be part of this.
Thank you.
We're honored.
Good
Yeah.
night, everyone.
Thanks. Good night.
Be
Thanks
safe.
a lot. Good night.